Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining this session, Scaling Smart, Agile, Remote Production and Virtualized Workflows. At Calrec, we're all about flexibility. Our goal is to provide customers with a tool set or a virtualized ecosystem that allows them to use remote production technologies in ways that suit their productions from a commercial point of view, from a technical point of view and from an operational point of view. One of the challenges we have though is articulating the use cases for remote production around the world, which is one of the reasons it's such a pleasure today to have some of our friends with us from Vivid Broadcast and from Aurora Media Worldwide to look at some of the innovations that they've made over the years, and more recently the innovations that they have put together for their new remote production centre and the Borough OB truck. My name is Henry Goodman. I head up the product management at Calrec Audio. And today on the panel we have Francis Cousins, who's the head of technical innovation at Vivid Media, Simon Cox, audio guarantee, at Vivid Broadcast, Emily Meron, head of technical production at Aurora Media Worldwide. So Emily, I'd quite like to start with you, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure thing.
To frame the conversation that we're having this morning, I thought it might be interesting to ask you, from a creative and production point of view, how do you decide whether a production suits remote production or on-site production?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that there's ever a completely right answer to it. And also within that, there's then, do you go kind of a remote production where it's fully everything on site and send it all back to kind of a production facility? So are you doing a track cut on site? Are you doing individual cameras all the way back? But I think the kind of thought process that I go through is where is the event? Can you get a truck there is kind of crucial. And then looking at that, is it a series where you want to have like a really, you want to have continuity across all the deliveries. So you kind of want to be delivering the same cameras in the same places. But if it's a global project, you're not necessarily going to be able to get that with on-site trucks. Then there's where have you got your studio, where have you got your production, where have you got your commentary, what show are you actually making? So there's not really there's not a template for it. It's not like there's a flow chart you can go through and work out whether you're taking it remote or whether you're going to have it as a truck. It's a kind of case-by-case basis. You have to work with your client to know what they want delivering. If it's a production-heavy show, you want to make sure you've got enough production weight on site to get people in the right place, deal with all the talent. If it's more of a world feed show, it's kind of a bit easier to remote because it's not quite copy and paste, but it's a lot more straightforward. You can kind of plan that out a lot more in advance. So the short answer is it's a long answer. But yeah, hopefully that's kind of like a kind of rough guide of some of the frameworks that we use.
So I guess it does sometimes come down to where you want to do the mixing, where you want to do the production. What about things like sustainability and welfare of the staff and these sort of elements? How much of a...
So sustainability is a huge thing for us. Obviously a lot of the sports that we do are esports, so we're lean quite heavily into that. Also accessibility for getting people involved with production. When you can have it in a London production centre, it's a lot more accessible than some of the stuff on site. There's also the kind of downside of that, and the other side of the coin is that you're looking at all these beautiful pictures coming back from Miami or something like that, and you're stuck at the wrong hour of night, having not quite such a good time in London.
I'd like to move to you, Simon. At Vivid, you're working quite a lot with Sky on their coverage of the Women's Super League. Wonder if you can give us an overview of the sort of remote elements of that and how you cater for the audio side on making that as transparent to the operators as possible.
Primarily from an audio perspective, a lot of our our dedicated audios are sent back via embedded feeds on the vision circuits. So it keeps everything in sync for us. That's quite easy to facilitate from the perspective. The hard part comes where you've got the local monitor mixes that need to be generated for IFBs. We do that with an RP1, which is remote controlled from Sky's base in Osterley, and we take that and we put that back through our Argo in our new OB truck Barra, and we can monitor it from there. We can ensure that everything's being generated as it should be, and just getting sort of your ears across what is going out to talent, what's going out back to Sky, going both ways, including any sort of full wires that we might have between the two. It's quite important to be able to listen to it all, and from that you can sort of give the confidence to the far side, whether you're remote or whether you're at site, that everything's sort of running as it should be. And from a seamless sort of perspective to make everything run smoother, we use a lot of digital recall is amazing. Being able to just load the show file or the file in the intercom as well, just to get everything work together. It's really, that's how we do it.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think that leads into some of the conversations we'll have in a minute with Francis. But Francis, at the remote production centre that you've just done, you have a Calrec Argo N console, and you have a number of smaller Type R consoles. And I think they work together in quite an innovative way, but certainly that was new to me. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that and the reason and why you did that.
Absolutely. So when we were building this remote production centre, we had a kind of target from Aurora, which was to keep the gallery operation crew down. We're putting out 4-camera women's football primarily, and there is a demand not to have a separate sound mixer for that. The obvious answer is an all-in-one production solution, say something like a computer that can handle audio and replays in one. But then there was an additional requirement that the WSL wanted, which was AI and assisted slow motion. So we're after ultimate flexibility. So we ended up putting in place the Type R cores, which we could split into multiple sound desks, and then automating them so that the audio mix follows what's cut on the Vision mixer. So, and we use the bit focus buttons control system to achieve that, and we're rolling that out. And alongside the Argo, which also provides coverage, we have a toolkit where we can produce. We can tie all of these together using Calrec's True Control 2.0. We can have a sound supervisor listening on the Argo, making tweaks to mixes on those Type R consoles that are also being automated by directors. The Type R radio panels are really neat, compact surfaces, and they're simple. So we can put that in front of a director as well and say, this is the commentator's mic. You know, if you think the commentator's too loud, you are welcome to touch this fader and adjust it as you see fit. So it's, in a way, we've been able to, using the Calrec tools, simplify the sound mix to a point where one person can do it. And initially, at the beginning of the season, we had a bit of pushback on that. Directors are saying, there's no way I can mix the sound. But very quickly, they realized that through all of these control protocols that's been enabled by Calrec, we could achieve a really easy operation.
I think that's really interesting, going back to my comments at the top about understanding what these technologies can do for you. It isn't just about having the traditional remote location in a venue coming back. It's a whole new way of looking at different workflows and understanding what you can achieve by it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the alternative would be 4 different OB trucks out at different locations with full sound guarantees and sound supervisors producing a mix, whereas we can have that single person keeping an overview over the details and the refinements of that without needing to be across all 4 at the same time.
Excellent. I'd like to stay with you, Francis, because I'm interested in talking to you about at Vivid you cater for a wide spectrum of different programming, different productions, and how do you use the sort of newer sort of virtualized technology to shift or scale or pivot between, for example, 2 productions, maybe a remote and a local production?
So Vivid was found for years and years. Vivid's got a very strong reputation in the LE market. We do a lot of ARRI cinematic productions, and we still have that core ability behind us. and we've also embraced sport. But what this means is we can't have a one-size-fits-all solution. With remote production, we're looking at doing football stadiums on one side and then maybe a corporate discussion panel on the other side. And all of those require very different audio setups. And what we've essentially done is we've developed sets of templates. So one of the critical challenges with remote production is making sure that people on site and remotely, if you're doing a complex production, are speaking the same language. That on-site guarantee needs to understand this is how the audio is transmitted. They're expecting the audio gains to be done on site so that the bit rates in the transmission paths can be maximized and maybe compressed. But you're walking into these jobs, we're rolling them out very quickly. There's not a huge amount of time to pre-produce them, and we essentially need to follow templates for that. And that's but again, what Simon was saying about being able to recall, we've built these templates. Say we're doing a production panel, we can flip gallery from a remote 4-camera remote football.
So that's interesting. Would you say there's probably more preparation involved in a remote production than there is in a local production?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with a remote production, and this is something that Emily was saying the other day as well, was with an OB truck, everyone knows that they can use the tools at the disposal and quickly turn around a production and make it work. With remote production, there are more things that need to be considered. We're talking latencies, IFBs, mixed minuses. That all needs to be generated in a way that's not distracting for people, say, on stage speaking. And there's other variables at play as well, making sure that your audio sources, if they are arriving on separate paths, making sure that they remain in sync. Yeah. And there is less
down to the planning.
Absolutely, there's less opportunity to be dynamic with it, which is why having some templated fundamental decisions made early on means that you can cut away that remote production, that pre-production process.
Yeah, perhaps that goes back to what Emily was saying about whether you how you decide whether to go with a remote production and the production. Yeah. So, for example, you mentioned productions that are repeated many times, and there's a bit of a template for that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you haven't planned it properly, you can come unstuck quite quickly on a remote. And it's also quite difficult to line up everyone so that you're all troubleshooting the same thing at the same time, like in just the practical nature of like humans going about their day-to-day job. The people on site have issues that you don't know about if you're not on site, and vice versa. So no one knows each other's problems on site. It's something we say quite a lot. If you haven't done the initial lining up the one-to-ones before you go on site, trying to do that in retrospect is a really tricky thing to line everyone up to do.
That communication layer becomes so much more essential, and you're communicating at scale as well. You're not talking about that video feed's contributing to me is up and that audio feed's up. You're saying, okay, these out of these 64 channels, are they all doing what we expect? At Vivid, one of the things we're trying to do is simplify that communication process. So giving people at either end a lot of visibility over those signal paths, what the people on site are seeing and what the people remotely are seeing. And that's something that it comes into monitoring and control and really tying those two together, so not so much has to be said explicitly over a talkback link.
That's all sort of stuff that I think when people talk about remote production, they don't really think about those sort of things beforehand. It's all remote. We're just going to do it with remote production. So it's interesting to get that insight from you. Looking a little bit into the future, how do you think you're going to change what you do with these sort of more remote, with these sort of technologies which are more remote, virtualized technologies, things like the Calrec True Control version 2, for example? How do you see that moving forward in changing what you do?
I think we're moving more and more to a world where there's a different type of QC process. Especially with the automated remote productions that we're doing at the moment, being able to be across lots of different sources, lots of different mixes, and be able to make adjustments to other desks kind of subtly and gently to just help guide everything forward. I mean, the reality is so our brand new OB truck, OB Barra, has been built as a remote production vehicle. It doesn't have a vision mixer in it. It does have a 48 fader Argo M. The reason we put that in is because that on-site sound mixing environment is really important still. There's so much, that is where the mics are, that is where the sound is being captured.
It's interesting that because we were talking before the panel about that the added value about being on site. So from an audio supervisor point of view, understanding where the mics are, understanding that in a live sports environment that there's stuff going on off camera and you need to be aware of it. You need to understand where the mics are. You need to understand where the cameras are so that you can mix that.
True Control gives that ability for the remote operation to see the status of all those mics on site, and to have some level of control, but also empowering the person on site to carry out their job as they need to, not using a web interface or something, but having a proper panel to adjust their gains, puffles, and be able to really, investigate the sound.
Well, that's music to my ears from Calrec point of view. The more hardware surfaces we have, the better. Excellent. So thank you very much for that insight. Thank you, Emily, Simon and Francis, for your insightful comments there. And thank you to everybody for joining us. I hope you're leaving with some inspiration on how you might do your own remote productions. If you have any questions or you want to see the Calrec True Control version 2 in action itself, you can join us on the Calrec stand at A40. Or for more information, you can visit the Calrec website, calrec.com. Thank you very much, everybody.